The space station Forge hung in the darkness between stars like a metal city floating in nothing. Inside its great battle arena, hundreds of warriors stood in perfect lines. They were the Vorn, a race of predators known across the galaxy for their strength and their love of war. Their bodies were covered in thick green scales. Their eyes glowed yellow like small suns. Each one stood over 7 feet tall, and their muscles moved like coiled snakes beneath their skin. Commander Grak walked slowly in front of the new recruits. His voice was deep and rough, like rocks grinding together. He had fought in 40 battles and won them all. Scars covered his face like a map of violence. Every Vorn in the arena respected him. Every Vorn feared him. "Today, you join the fleet," Grak said. "Today, you become hunters." The Vorn recruits raised their fists and roared. The sound shook the walls. It was the sound of pride. The sound of power. But not everyone in the arena was Vorn. Standing at the very end of the last row were 4 figures who did not roar. 3 of them were Krell cubs, young members of a species that had only recently joined the Galactic Alliance. They had soft gray fur, large round ears, and eyes that looked too big for their faces. The oldest was Yuna, a female who had just turned 16 in human years. Next to her stood her brother Day, who was 15. The youngest was Hana, only 14, and she held her brother's arm tightly because she was afraid. The Krell were not warriors. They were known for being kind, for building things, for helping others. No one understood why 3 Krell cubs had been sent to serve on a Vorn battle station, but the 4th figure was even stranger. Tay stood with his arms crossed over his chest. He was human. The only one on the entire station. He was not as tall as the Vorn. He was not as strong. He did not have scales, or claws, or sharp teeth. He had brown skin, black hair cut short, and dark eyes that watched everything but showed nothing. He wore the same gray uniform as everyone else. But on him it looked wrong. Like putting armor on a house pet. The Vorn noticed him immediately. "Look," one of them whispered. "They sent us a human. And babies," another added, pointing at the cubs. "What is this? A joke?" Laughter spread through the arena like a disease. At first it was quiet, hidden behind scaled hands. Then it grew louder. Soon, dozens of Vorn were laughing openly, their yellow eyes bright with amusement. Grak raised one hand and the laughter stopped. "Silence," he commanded. He walked toward the end of the row where Tay and the cubs stood. His heavy boots made the floor shake with each step. He stopped directly in front of Tay and looked down at him. "Human," Grak said. "What is your name?" "Tay," he answered. His voice was calm and steady. "Tay," Grak repeated, tasting the word like something bitter. "I have heard stories about humans. They say your kind is clever, that you fight dirty, that you never give up." He leaned closer, his yellow eyes burning. "Is this true?" Tay met his gaze without looking away. "Some stories are true." For a moment, no one moved. Then Grak smiled, but there was no warmth in it. He turned to face the arena. "This human and these cubs have been assigned to my station by the Alliance Council. I did not ask for them. I did not want them." He spread his arms wide. "But the Council believes in fairness. They believe everyone deserves a chance to prove themselves." More laughter rippled through the crowd. "So I will give them a chance," Grak continued. "Squad 9. The Forgotten Squad. They will guard the cargo bays. They will clean the storage rooms. They will do the jobs that no real warrior wants." A Vorn in the front row called out, "How long do you think they will last, Commander?" Grak thought for a moment. "I give the human 1 week before he begs to leave." "The cubs?" 3 days. The arena exploded with laughter again. Some Vorn slapped their knees, others wiped tears from their glowing eyes. It was the funniest thing they had heard in years. Yuna felt her face grow hot with shame. She wanted to disappear. Day clenched his small fists, his claws digging into his palms. Hana pressed herself against her brother and tried not to cry. Only Tay remained still. When the laughter finally died down, the Vorn dispersed. They walked past Tay and the cubs, without looking at them, as if they were invisible. One large warrior deliberately bumped into Tay's shoulder as he passed. "Watch where you stand, soft skin," the warrior growled. Tay said nothing. He simply stepped aside and waited for the arena to empty. When they were finally alone, Yuna spoke. Her voice was quiet and shaky. "They hate us," she said. "No," Tay replied. "They do not think about us enough to hate us. To them, we are nothing." "Then what do we do?" Tay asked. His young voice was angry, but also scared. Tay finally moved. He turned to face the three cubs and studied them carefully. Yuna stood tall despite her fear. Tay was ready to fight even though he did not know how. Hana was terrified, but had not run away. "First," Tay said, "we find our quarters, then we eat, then we rest." "And then?" Yuna asked. Tay's dark eyes held something that the cubs did not understand yet. Something old and patient and very, very dangerous. "Then we train," he said. "Because one day, something will go wrong on this station. When that day comes, the Vorn will be too proud to ask for help. They will fight alone, like they always do, and they will expect us to hide." He paused and looked at each of the cubs in turn. "But we will not hide. We will be ready. And when the time comes, we will show them what the Forgotten Ones can do." Hana wiped her eyes and looked up at Tay. "But we are not fighters. We do not know how to fight." "You will learn," Tay said simply. "Humans have a saying, 'The wolf does not concern himself with the opinion of sheep,' but there is another saying we have." He smiled for the first time. And there was something wild in it. "Sometimes, the sheep become wolves." He turned and walked toward the exit, his footsteps echoing in the empty arena. The three cubs looked at each other. They did not understand everything the human had said, but they understood enough. They understood that he was not going to abandon them. They understood that he believed they could be more than what the Vorn saw. And so, with nothing else to hold on to, they followed him. Outside the arena, the station hummed with activity. Vorn warriors marched through the corridors, their weapons gleaming. They did not look at Tay or the cubs. They did not need to. Everyone already knew the story of the Forgotten Squad, but Tay walked with his head high. The cubs struggled to keep up with his steady pace. In her mind, Yuna made a silent promise. She did not know what the future held. She did not know if they would survive even 1 week on this station full of predators who saw them as prey. But she promised herself that whatever happened, she would not be the weak thing they believed she was. She would become something else. They all would. 3 weeks passed on the station forge, and the Forgotten Squad was still forgotten. Every morning, Tay woke the cubs before the station lights turned on. They trained in the empty cargo bay that had become their home. At first, the cubs could barely run without losing their breath. Their soft bodies were not made for war. Their gentle spirits did not understand violence. But Tay was patient. He taught them to move quietly. He taught them to use their small size as a strength instead of a weakness. He taught them that a warrior did not need to be big. A warrior only needed to be smart. "The Vorn fight with power," Tay explained one morning as they practiced in the dim light. "They charge forward. They crush their enemies with force. But what happens when the enemy is faster? What happens when the enemy is not where they expect?" Yuna thought about this. The Vorn would miss. Yes. And while they are confused, what do you do? "Strike," Day said eagerly. He had grown to love training. The anger he felt on the first day had transformed into determination. Tay nodded. "Strike and move. Never stay in one place. Never fight fair if you can help it. Fair fights are for fools who want to die with honor. We do not want to die at all." Hana, the youngest, had changed the most. She no longer hid behind her brother. Her large eyes, once filled only with fear, now held something else. Focus. Purpose. "What if there are too many enemies?" she asked. "What if we cannot run?" Tay knelt down to her level. "Then, you make them pay for every step they take. You turn the ground into a trap. You use everything around you as a weapon. A wall, a shadow, a piece of broken metal, everything. The cubs listened and learned. Day after day, they grew stronger. Not in the way the Vorn were strong, but in their own way. Meanwhile, the Vorn continued to ignore them. Sometimes, a warrior would walk through the cargo bay and see them training. The warrior would laugh or shake his head and continue walking. Once, a young Vorn threw a piece of garbage at Day and called him a furry target. Day did not react. He waited until the Vorn left, then continued his exercises. Tay was proud of him for that. The greatest weapon, Tay told them one night, is patience. Let them think we are weak. Let them forget we exist. When the moment comes, their surprise will be our advantage. The moment came on the 22nd day. Tay was teaching Yuna how to use a small blade when the station's alarm screamed to life. Red lights flashed everywhere. The floor shook as if the station itself was afraid. "What is happening?" Hana shouted over the noise. Tay grabbed his communicator and listened to the emergency channel. His face became hard like stone. "Raiders," he said. "A hostile fleet has breached the outer defenses. They are boarding the station." The cubs looked at each other with wide eyes. They had trained for this. They had prepared for this. But now that it was real, fear tried to crawl back into their hearts. Tay saw their fear, and he did not try to make it go away. "Fear is good," he said. "Fear keeps you alive. But do not let it control you. Use it. Let it make you fast. Let it make you careful." He checked his weapon, a simple pulse pistol that the Vorn had given him because they thought he could not handle anything bigger. Then he looked at the cubs. "Stay close to me. Do exactly what I say. We will survive this together." They nodded. And in that moment, they were no longer scared children. They were Squad 9. The forgotten ones, who refused to be forgotten. The station shook again as explosions echoed through the corridors. Through the communicator, they could hear Commander Grack shouting orders. "All combat units to the main hangar. Protect the command center. Do not let them reach the core." Tay waited for his orders. None came. "They did not call us," Yuna said quietly. "No," Tay agreed. "They did not." Day's fur stood up with anger. "They would rather die than ask for our help?" "Yes," Tay said. "The Vorn are proud. Too proud. But that is not our problem right now." He pulled up a map of the station on his communicator. "The main hangar is here. The command center is here. All the Vorn warriors are moving to protect these locations." "What about the cargo bays?" Hana asked. Tay pointed to the far side of the map. "Here. Section 7. Completely unprotected." He looked at the cubs. "If you were a raider, and you knew the Vorn, what would you do?" Yuna understood immediately. "I would attack where they are not. I would go to the cargo bays." "Exactly. The Vorn think like predators. They protect the things they value most. Power. Control. The command center. But raiders think differently. Raiders want supplies. Equipment. Things they can steal and sell. So they will come here," Day said. "They will come here," Tay confirmed. "And we will be waiting." For a moment, no one spoke. The alarms continued to scream. The red lights continued to flash. Somewhere on the station, Vorn warriors were fighting and dying. And here in the forgotten cargo bay, 4 souls prepared for a battle no one expected them to fight. Tay moved quickly. He pointed to different parts of the bay. "Yuna, I need you on that platform above the main door. Take this." He handed her a pulse rifle that he had hidden under his cot weeks ago. The cubs stared at it in surprise. "I borrowed it from the armory," Tay explained with a small smile. "The Vorn do not count their weapons very carefully." Yuna took the rifle. Her hands shook slightly, but her grip was firm. "Day," Tay continued, "help me move these cargo crates. We need cover. We need places to hide. And we need to create a path that leads the enemy exactly where we want them." Day nodded and started pushing the heavy crates. His small body struggled, But he did not stop. "Hana," Tay said gently, "I have the most important job for you." The youngest cub looked up at him with her big eyes. "What is it?" "You are going to be our eyes. You can fit in spaces that we cannot. I need you to watch the corridors. When you see the enemy coming, you tell us. Then you hide. Do not fight. Do not be brave. Just watch and hide. Can you do that?" Hana straightened her spine. "I can do that." "Good." Tay put his hand on her head gently. "You are braver than you know." They worked fast. The cargo bay transformed. What was once an open space became a maze of crates and shadows. Tay positioned himself near the center, where he could move to help anyone who needed him. Yuna found her spot on the high platform, her rifle aimed at the main door. Day hid behind a wall of crates, ready to strike at anyone who passed. And Hana slipped into the ventilation shaft, her small body moving through the metal tunnels like water through a pipe. Then, they waited. The alarm stopped. The station became quiet, too quiet. Through the communicator, Tay heard scattered reports. The Vorn were holding the main hangar, but they were taking heavy losses. The raiders were better equipped than anyone expected. They had plasma cannons. They had combat robots. They had no mercy. "They are coming," Hana's voice whispered through the communicator. "I see them. Many of them. 20 at least. Maybe more." Tay's heart beat faster, but his voice stayed calm. "Describe them. They look like insects. Big. Black armor. 4 arms each. They have weapons I have never seen. Krix," Tay said quietly. He had fought Krix raiders before. Many years ago. They were brutal. Fast. They killed everything they found, and took everything they could carry. "What do we do?" Yuna's voice came through the communicator. She sounded scared, but she was still on her platform. She had not run. Tay took a deep breath. "We do what they do not expect," he said. "We win." The door to the cargo bay began to open. Through the growing gap, Tay could see the black shapes moving closer. He could hear the clicking sound of their legs on the metal floor. He raised his pistol, and in the shadows around him, 3 young cubs who had never fought in a real battle, prepared to show the galaxy what the Forgotten Ones could do. The first Krix raider stepped through the door, and Tay felt time slow down. The creature was exactly as Hana had described. It stood on 4 thick legs covered in black armor that looked like the shell of a beetle. Its body was hunched forward, and 4 arms extended from its torso, each one holding a different weapon. Its head was flat and wide, with dozens of small red eyes that moved constantly, searching for threats. Behind it came more. They poured into the cargo bay like a dark river, their clicking legs creating a terrible rhythm on the metal floor. Tay counted quickly. 23, 24, 25. They were outnumbered more than 6 to 1. The Krix spread out, moving between the cargo crates with practiced ease. They had done this many times before. Raid, kill, steal, leave. It was simple for them. They did not expect resistance. Why would they? This was just a cargo bay, just supplies waiting to be taken. They did not see the small shape hidden on the platform above. They did not see the young Krell waiting in the shadows. They did not see the human with dark eyes who had been waiting for them since the moment they breached the station. Tay let the first group pass his position. He watched them move deeper into the bay, toward the valuable cargo in the back. He counted their steps. He measured their distance from each other. He noticed which ones seemed like leaders, and which ones were just followers. Then he gave the signal. Now, Yuna fired. The pulse rifle screamed, and a bolt of blue energy struck the lead Krix directly in the back of its head. The creature collapsed without a sound. Before its body hit the ground, Yuna had already fired twice more. 2 more Krix fell. For a single beautiful moment, the raiders froze in confusion. They had been ambushed. But where was the enemy? Their red eyes scanned the bay, searching for the shooter. That moment of confusion was all Tay needed. He burst from his hiding spot and ran straight at the nearest Krix. The creature saw him and raised its weapons. But Tay was already inside its guard. He ducked under its forearms, pressed his pistol against a gap in its armor, and fired. The Crix screamed and fell. "Move!" Tay shouted as he dove behind a crate. Plasma bolts flew over his head, burning the air. The cargo bay erupted into chaos. The Crix were not fools. They recovered from their surprise quickly and began to coordinate their attack. Some of them laid down covering fire while others advanced toward Yuna's platform. They had identified the biggest threat, and they wanted to eliminate it. But they had forgotten about Day. The young Krell waited until 3 Crix passed his hiding spot. Then he leaped out from behind the crates and landed on the back of the last one in line. His claws, which the Vorn had mocked as useless, found the gaps in the Crix armor and dug deep. The raider thrashed and spun, trying to throw Day off. But the cub held on with all his strength. The other 2 Crix turned to help their companion. And that was their mistake. Tay was already there. He shot one in the chest and kicked the legs out from under the other. As the Crix fell, Tay brought his pistol down on its head with a sharp crack. The creature stopped moving. "Day, move!" Tay grabbed the young Krell and pulled him behind cover, just as plasma bolts tore through the space where they had been standing. "That was incredible," Day breathed, his eyes wide with excitement and fear. "That was dangerous," Tay replied, but there was pride in his voice. "Good work. Now stay focused." Above them, Yuna was in trouble. The Crix had found a way to climb to her platform, and she was running out of space to retreat. Her rifle fired again and again, but for every raider she killed, 2 more took its place. "I need help." Her voice crackled through the communicator. Tay looked around frantically. He was pinned down by enemy fire. He could not reach her in time. Then Hana's voice came through the communicator, small but steady. "I see a path. Yuna, there is a ladder on the back of the platform. It goes down to the service tunnels. I can lead you through." "How do you know?" Yuna asked. "Because I have been crawling through these tunnels for 3 weeks. I know every path. Trust me." Yuna did not hesitate. She fired one last shot at the approaching Crix, then turned and ran for the ladder. The raiders roared and chased after her, but she was already climbing down into the darkness. "Turn left," Hana instructed. "Then straight for 20 meters. There is a grate on your right. It opens into the secondary storage room." Yuna followed the instructions, her heart pounding in her chest. Behind her, she could hear the Crix trying to squeeze into the tunnel. They were too big. Their armor scraped against the walls, and their angry clicking echoed through the metal passage. "They cannot follow," Yuna reported with relief. "Good. Keep moving. I will bring you back to Tay." On the cargo bay floor, Tay and Day were fighting for their lives. The Crix had regrouped and were closing in from all sides. There were still more than 15 of them, and their plasma weapons were tearing the cargo crates to pieces. "We need to fall back," Day said, his voice shaking. Tay shook his head. "If we run, they win. If they win here, they will take the supplies and leave. Then they will come back with more ships. More raiders. They will bleed this station dry. Then what do we do?" Tay looked at the cargo crates around them. He remembered what was stored in this section. Fuel cells. Emergency power supplies. Highly unstable if damaged. A plan formed in his mind. It was dangerous. It was possibly stupid. But it might work. "Day, do you trust me?" The young Krell looked at the human who had trained him, protected him, and believed in him when no one else did. "Yes," he said simply. "Good. On my signal, I want you to run. Run faster than you have ever run before. Head for the emergency exit on the far wall. Do not stop. Do not look back. What about you?" "I will be right behind you." Tay smiled, but his eyes were hard. "I promise." He pulled out a small device from his pocket. It was a remote detonator. The Cubs had seen him building it during their training sessions, but they had never asked what it was for. Now Day understood. "You planned this," the Cub whispered. "I planned for everything," Tay replied. "I had to. We were always going to be the last line of defense. I just did not know when." He pressed a button on the detonator, and a soft beeping sound began somewhere deep in the cargo bay. The Cricks heard it too. Their red eyes searched for the source of the sound. Now, Day, run. Day ran. Tay stood up from his cover and fired at the Cricks. Not to kill them, but to get their attention. It worked. Every red eye in the bay turned to him. Every weapon aimed at the lone human standing in the open. "Hey!" Tay shouted. "You want supplies? Come and get them!" He turned and sprinted toward the emergency exit. Plasma bolts screamed past him. One grazed his shoulder, burning through his uniform and searing his skin. He did not slow down. Behind him, the Cricks gave chase. They were fast, faster than he expected. Their legs clicked against the floor like 100 drumbeats. They were gaining on him. Tay saw Day reach the emergency exit, saw the door open, saw the young Krell turn back with terror in his eyes. "Go!" Tay screamed. He dove through the door just as the fuel cells exploded. The blast was enormous. Fire and force erupted through the cargo bay, consuming everything in its path. The Cricks raiders, caught in the open with no cover, were thrown like toys by the explosion. Their armor, designed to stop bullets and plasma, could not protect them from the raw power of the blast. Tay hit the ground hard on the other side of the door. His ears rang. His vision blurred. He could feel blood running down his arm from the plasma burn, but he was alive. Strong hands grabbed him and pulled him further from the door. When his vision cleared, he saw Day and Yuna kneeling over him, their faces filled with worry. "Tay. Tay. Are you okay?" Yuna's voice seemed to come from very far away. "I am fine," he managed to say, though his body screamed that he was lying. "The Cricks?" Day looked back at the door. Smoke was pouring through the gaps, and the sound of secondary explosions could be heard inside. "I do not think any of them survived," the young Krell said quietly. Tay closed his eyes and let out a long breath. They had won. Against all odds, against an enemy that should have destroyed them, they had won. Then Hana's voice came through the communicator, and it was filled with fresh fear. "Tay, more are coming. I see them on the sensors." The explosion attracted attention. "There is another group heading to our position." Bigger than the first, Tay forced himself to sit up, ignoring the pain that shot through his body. "How many?" he asked. Hana's answer made his blood run cold. "At least 40. Tay stood up on legs that did not want to hold him. His shoulder burned with every heartbeat. His lungs felt filled with smoke. But there was no time for pain. There was no time for weakness. "We need to move," he said. "Where?" Yuna asked. Her fur was covered in dust and ash. The pulse rifle in her hands was nearly empty. "The cargo bay is destroyed. We cannot go back." Tay looked around the corridor. Emergency lights flickered red and orange. The station's alarm system had stopped working in this section, damaged by the explosion. They were in a dead zone now. No communications, no backup, no way to call for help. "The service corridor." Hana's voice came through the communicator. She was still in the ventilation system, watching from above. "It connects to the medical bay. We can make a stand there. Can you lead us?" Tay asked. "Yes. Follow the corridor ahead. Take the second left. I will meet you there." They moved quickly but carefully. Day helped Tay walk, supporting the injured human with his shoulder. Yuna took point, her rifle raised and ready. They did not speak. Words would waste energy they could not afford to lose. The service corridor was narrow and dark. Old pipes ran along the ceiling, dripping water that had turned brown from rust. The floor was covered in dust that no one had cleaned in years. It was ugly. It was forgotten. It was perfect. "Here," Hana said, dropping down from a ventilation grate. She landed softly on her feet, and for a moment she looked not like a frightened cub, but like something else. Something wild. Tay studied the corridor with the eyes of a soldier. The narrow width would limit how many Cricks could attack at once. The pipes above could provide cover. The darkness would help them hide. "This is where we make our stand," he said. "Against 40? Day asked. His voice was steady, but his eyes showed his fear. Tay looked at each of the cubs in turn. Yuna, who had been told she was too soft to fight. Day, who had been called a target. Hana, who everyone thought was just a scared child. "I will not lie to you," Tay said quietly. "I do not know if we will survive this. The enemy is strong. There are many of them. We are hurt and tired and running out of weapons." He paused and looked down the corridor, toward the sounds of clicking legs that were growing closer. "But I know this. I have fought beside Vorn warriors. I have fought beside soldiers from a dozen different worlds, and none of them, not one, had more courage than you three." Yuna felt tears sting her eyes. Day stood a little taller. Hana reached out and took her brother's hand. "The Vorn think courage means not being afraid," Tay continued. "They are wrong. Courage means being afraid and fighting anyway. It means standing up when everyone tells you to stay down. It means protecting what matters, even when you know you might lose." He raised his pistol, though his injured arm screamed in protest. "Today, we show them what courage really looks like." The first Crix appeared at the end of the corridor. Then another. Then 10 more. They filled the passage like a flood of black armor and red eyes. When they saw the 4 figures waiting for them, they made a sound that might have been laughter. Just 4 little creatures. 1 injured human. 3 cubs with fur and claws. This would be easy. The lead Crix raised its weapon and fired. Tay shoved Yuna behind a pipe as the plasma bolt screamed past them. "Spread out! Use the cover!" The battle began. In the narrow corridor, the Crix could not use their numbers effectively. Only 3 or 4 could stand side by side, and the pipes above created obstacles that blocked their shots. Tay used every advantage, moving from cover to cover, firing precise shots that found gaps in the enemy's armor. Yuna fought beside him, her fear transformed into focus. She no longer thought about dying. She thought only about the next shot, the next target, the next moment. Day had no gun. His rifle had been lost in the explosion. But he had his claws. And in the darkness of the corridor, he had something else. Stealth. He moved through the shadows like smoke, appearing behind the Crix when they least expected it. His claws struck fast and disappeared before they could react. Hana did not fight with weapons. She fought with knowledge. From her position in the ventilation shaft above, she watched everything. She saw the Crix commanders giving orders. She saw where they were concentrating their forces. She saw the gaps in their formation. "Tay, 3 on your left, hiding behind the broken pipe." Tay spun and fired. 3 shots, 3 kills. "Yuna. They are trying to circle around through the side vent." Yuna aimed and fired into the vent. A Crix screamed and stopped moving. "Day, 1 is coming up behind you." Day dropped to the ground as a plasma bolt passed over his head, then lunged forward and drove his claws into the attacker's leg. The Crix fell, and Day finished it before it could rise. Together, the 4 of them fought like they had trained for years instead of weeks. They moved as one unit, each covering the others, each trusting the others completely. But the Crix kept coming. For every raider they killed, more appeared. 10 became 20. 20 became 30. The corridor filled with bodies, both Crix and the broken pieces of pipes and walls torn apart by plasma fire. Tay's pistol ran out of energy. He grabbed a weapon from a fallen Crix and kept fighting. His injured shoulder had gone numb, which was either very good or very bad. He did not have time to think about it. Yuna took a hit to her side. The plasma burned through her fur and skin, and she cried out in pain. But she did not fall. She gritted her teeth, switched the rifle to her other hand, and kept shooting. Day was bleeding from a dozen small cuts where Crix claws had found him in the darkness. His gray fur was stained red, but he did not stop moving. He could not stop. If he stopped, his sisters would die. "There are too many," Hana shouted from above. Her voice was raw from yelling directions. "We cannot hold them." Tay looked around the corridor. Bodies everywhere, smoke and fire. His squad, his family, was falling apart around him, and the Crix were still coming. Something broke inside him then. Not his spirit. His spirit was iron and fire and would never break. No. Something else broke. The part of him that calculated odds. The part that planned for tomorrow. The The part that thought about survival. What remained was something older, something that humans had carried since they first walked on Earth, the willingness to die on their feet rather than live on their knees. Yuna, Tay said, his voice strange and calm. Protect Hana. Fall back to the medical bay. What about you? Yuna demanded. Tay smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of a man who had made peace with what was coming. I am going to buy you time. No! Day grabbed his arm. We do not leave each other. You taught us that. I taught you to survive. Now survive. He pushed Day away, hard enough to make the cub stumble. Go. That is an order. Tears ran down Yuna's face. Day looked like he wanted to scream. But they knew. They knew that if they stayed, they would all die. And Tay would not let that happen. Hana dropped from the vent and grabbed her siblings. Come on. We have to go. Day struggled, but Hana held him tight. Yuna took one last look at Tay, trying to memorize his face. Thank you, she whispered, for everything. Then they were gone, running down the corridor toward the medical bay. Tay turned to face the Cricks. There were at least 20 left. They had stopped advancing, confused by the sudden change. Why was this one creature staying behind? What was it planning? Tay raised his stolen weapon and pointed it at the ceiling. Specifically, at the main pipe that ran above the corridor. The pipe that he had noticed carried fuel to the backup generators. The Cricks understood a moment too late. This is how humans die, Tay said quietly. We take you with us. He fired. The pipe exploded. Fire and metal rained down on the corridor, crushing the Cricks beneath debris and flame. Tay was thrown backward by the blast, his body hitting the wall with a terrible sound. He slid to the ground, broken and burned. His vision was fading. His breath came in short, painful gasps, but through the smoke and fire, he could see the corridor was blocked. The Cricks could not follow. His cubs, his children, were safe. Tay closed his eyes and let the darkness take him. He did not see the ceiling collapse on the remaining Cricks. He did not see the fire spread and consume everything. He did not see 3 figures come running back through the smoke, screaming his name. He did not see Day pull him from the rubble with strength the young cub did not know he had. He did not see Yuna press her hands against his wounds, crying and begging him to live. He did not see Hana clear a path through the wreckage, her small body moving with desperate purpose. He did not see any of it, but he felt it. In the darkness, somewhere between life and death, he felt small hands holding him. He felt warm tears falling on his face. He felt voices calling his name, refusing to let him go. And in that moment, the man who had been alone for so long understood something important. He was not alone anymore. He had a family, and his family was not going to let him die. Commander Grack had seen many battles in his long life. He had watched entire fleets burn in the void. He had stood on planets covered in the bodies of fallen warriors. He thought he had seen everything that war could offer. He was wrong. The battle for Station Forge had lasted 6 hours. The Vorn had fought with all their strength and fury. But the Crix raiders had been relentless. When reinforcements finally arrived from the main fleet, Grack counted his losses. 47 Vorn warriors dead, another 60 wounded. The main hangar was destroyed. The command center was heavily damaged. But they had won. The raiders were dead, or fleeing. Station Forge still stood. As Grack walked through the ruined corridors, checking on his surviving warriors, a young Vorn came running toward him. The soldier's yellow eyes were wide with something Grack had rarely seen in his people. Confusion. Commander, you need to see something. What is it? Section 7. The cargo bays. You need to see it yourself. Grack followed the soldier through the damaged station. As they walked, other Vorn joined them. Word was spreading through the ranks, though Grack did not know about what. By the time they reached Section 7, nearly 50 warriors were following him. The cargo bay, or what remained of it, was still smoking. Grack stepped through the emergency door and stopped. Bodies. Crix bodies. Everywhere. He counted quickly. 20. 30. More. The black armored raiders were scattered across the floor, like broken toys. Some had been shot. Some had been burned. Some had been killed by claws. Who did this? Grak asked, his voice barely a whisper. The young soldier pointed toward the service corridor. Grak walked past the cargo bay and into the narrow passage. Here, the destruction was even worse. The ceiling had collapsed. Pipes had exploded. And among the wreckage were more Crick's bodies. Many more. But that was not what made Grak stop. In the middle of the corridor, surrounded by dead enemies, were 4 figures. 3 Krell cubs sat in a circle around a human man. The man was badly injured, his body covered in burns and blood. But he was breathing. The cubs had wrapped his wounds with pieces of their own clothing. They had created a shelter around him from broken pieces of metal. They had refused to leave his side. Yuna looked up as Grak approached. Her eyes were red from crying, but her voice was steady. "He saved us," she said. "He saved all of us." Grak looked at the human. Then he looked at the cubs. Then he looked at the corridor, filled with dead Cricks. "You did this?" he asked. "The 4 of you?" "Yes," Day answered. His voice was small but proud. "We did this." Behind Grak, the Vorn warriors were silent. They stared at the scene before them, trying to understand what they were seeing. The forgotten squad, the weaklings, the jokes. They had done what 50 Vorn warriors could not. They had stopped an entire raider force with nothing but courage and determination. Grak knelt down next to Tay. The human's eyes were closed, but his chest rose and fell with shallow breaths. "He needs medical attention," Grak said. "Now." He stood and turned to his warriors. "Someone get a medical team here immediately. Move." 3 Vorn ran to obey. Grak looked at the cubs again. Yuna was watching him with something that might have been anger. Or maybe it was something else. Defiance. "We do not need your help," she said. "We did not need it before. We do not need it now." Grak could have been angry. Any other Vorn would have been angry. No one spoke to a commander that way. But Grak was not any other Vorn. "No," he said slowly. "You did not need our help. You proved that today." He paused. And when he spoke again, his rough voice was softer than anyone had ever heard it. "I was wrong about you. We were all wrong about you." Yuna did not respond. She simply turned back to Tay and continued holding his hand. The medical team arrived minutes later. They lifted Tay onto a stretcher and carried him toward the medical bay. The cubs followed, refusing to let him out of their sight. Grak watched them go. Then he turned to face the Vorn warriors who had gathered in the corridor. "Listen to me," he said, his voice carrying the weight of command. "What happened here today will be recorded in the histories of this station. These 4, who we called weak, who we called useless, defended this station when we were not here. They faced an enemy force 10 times their number, and they won." He pointed at the dead Cricks that littered the corridor. "Look at this. Look at what they did. And then ask yourselves, what is strength? Is it muscles? Is it scales? Is it size?" No one answered. "Strength is this," Grak continued. "Strength is standing when everyone expects you to fall. Strength is fighting when everyone expects you to run. Strength is protecting what you love, even when it costs you everything." He looked at each warrior in turn. "From this day forward, Squad 9 is no longer the Forgotten Squad. They are the Shield Squad. They held when we could not. They fought when we were not there. And they earned more honor in one battle than many of us have earned in a lifetime." One by one, the Vorn warriors began to bow. It started with the young soldiers who had seen the corridor first. Then it spread to the veterans, then to the commanders. Within moments, every Vorn in the passage had lowered their heads in respect. No one laughed. No one would ever laugh at Squad 9 again. In the medical bay, Tay finally opened his eyes. The first thing he saw was white ceiling. The second thing he saw was 3 furry faces hovering over him, their big eyes filled with tears and relief. "You are awake," Hana squealed. "You scared us," Day added, punching Tay's uninjured shoulder gently. Yuna did not say anything. She just grabbed his hand and held it tightly, as if she was afraid he might disappear. "What happened?" Tay asked. His voice was rough and weak. "We saved you," Yuna said. You tried to sacrifice yourself, but we would not let you. You carried me? Day carried you. Hana found the path. I kept you from bleeding to death. She smiled through her tears. We worked as a team, just like you taught us. Tay felt something warm spread through his chest. It was not pain. It was something else. Something he had not felt in a very long time. Pride, love, family. I thought I told you to run, he said softly. You did. Day replied. We did not listen. Humans are not the only ones who can be stubborn. With present, we did not listen. Humans are not the only ones who can be stubborn. A laugh escaped Tay's lips, followed by a wince of pain. I guess not. The door to the medical bay opened, and Commander Grak walked in. The cubs immediately moved between him and Tay, their small bodies tense with protective instinct. Grak raised his hands. I am not here to fight. I am here to... He paused, as if the words were difficult for him. To apologize. The cubs looked at each other in surprise. Grak walked to Tay's bedside and stood at attention. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he placed his fist over his heart. The Vorn gesture of deepest respect. I underestimated you, all of you. I thought you were weak because you were different. I was wrong. He looked at Tay directly. You taught these cubs to be warriors, better warriors than most Vorn I know. I do not understand how. But I know what I saw. And what I saw was worthy of honor. Tay met the commander's yellow eyes. We did not fight for honor. We fought because it was the right thing to do. Grak nodded slowly. Perhaps that is why you won. He turned to leave, then stopped at the door. When you are healed, you and your squad will have new quarters. Better quarters. You will have access to the armory, the training facilities. Everything the Vorn have. He paused. If you want it. Tay looked at the cubs. They looked back at him. No words were needed. They already knew what they wanted. We will stay, Tay said. But we will train our way. Not the Vorn way, Grak smiled. It was the first real smile anyone had ever seen on his scarred face. I would expect nothing less. He left, and the medical bay was quiet again. Yuna sat on the edge of Tay's bed. Day and Hana climbed up beside him, careful not to touch his injuries. What happens now? Hana asked. Tay looked at the ceiling, thinking about everything that had happened. The mockery, the training, the battle, the fire, the darkness, and now, this. Now, he said, we rest, we heal, and then we keep training. For what? Day asked. For whatever comes next. The galaxy is big. There will always be more battles, more enemies, more people who underestimate the small, and the gentle, and the forgotten. He put his arms around the cubs, pulling them close despite the pain. And we will show them all, just like we showed the Vorn. We will show them that strength is not about size or power or fear. Strength is about heart. And our hearts are stronger than anything. Yuna rested her head on his shoulder. Day pressed against his side. Hana curled up at his feet. They were hurt. They were tired. They were changed forever by what they had been through. But they were together, and in the silence of the medical bay, surrounded by his family, Tay smiled. The galaxy had laughed at them. The galaxy was not laughing anymore.